Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Oh, there you are, Eva. You're a bit muddled. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We're a minute away, so I'm just going to give those who are logging in at the last minute another opportunity to come in on board. So I'll check back in within about a minute, Eva, and then we'll begin.
Okay, sounds great. Thanks, Lori.
Thank you. Okay, it's 2 o'clock, and I know we have quite a full hour, Eva, and everyone who has joined us, so we'll get going. Thanks again for joining us for today's webinar, Locals First, Attracting Ontario Tourists Through Innovative Partnerships and Itineraries. My name is Lori McIsaac, and I am the Director of Operations with RTO9, Southeastern Ontario's partner for tourism. As Ontario moves to reopen, we're left wondering what direction tourism is going to take. How can businesses attract local visitors? That's where it's at right now. We're not seeing people, obviously, from outside of Canada and for the most part outside of Ontario. So how can they get them through their doors? What will it take to reemerge in this economy? And what strategies can be employed to attract local tourists? Packaging and itineraries are a few great options. We do have an hour set aside for this presentation this afternoon and a lot of ground to cover. Today's webinar is being presented by Eva Gutsche of STEM Consulting. Eva has been working with tourism operators across the country and helping businesses adapt to the impacts of COVID-19. Before we begin, I just want to cover off a few housekeeping topics. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be available on our industry website, tourismtalk.ca. Please feel free to revisit the content yourself and share it with colleagues. We also invite your comments and questions, so please look to the QA chat box on your screen in the control panel. If you think of a question for the speaker at any point, please feel free to type it in and we can discuss it throughout the presentation or at the end through the Q&A session. There will be a brief survey in your inbox when you close out this webinar. If you could please reply, it's very quick. It'll take you less than 2 minutes. We really appreciate your feedback. So let's get started. At this point, I'm going to hand the floor over to Eva, who's going to start today's presentation. Eva, it's all yours.
Super. Thank you so much, Lori, and welcome everyone. I know it's a busy time as businesses are reopening and you're starting to welcome people back, locals and hopefully tourists, or that will start very soon. So thank you for taking this time today. And again, we've got a smaller group today, so lots of opportunity to customize this and jump in. If you have specific questions, Lori and I will do our very best to answer them. If we can't, our commitment to you is we're going to find the answer for you after the fact and get back to you. So Lori did the intro already, so I'll just carry on. So we're going to look at working with community partners. And part of the challenge with where we are right now with COVID-19 is that we're going to have some product gaps. So we're going to end up in a situation where you haven't been before, or you've got some perhaps food and beverage, or you've got some activities that might be missing. So how do you use your community network and packaging to actually fill that gap? And we're going to look at shifting customer types. So I think many of you already enjoy a strong Ontario customer base. Though you've got a situation where you've also had customers coming from other countries and other regions, and how do you fill that gap? And so really looking at targeting your best fit short haul customer. So I'm looking to bring people into my business in July. How do I go about doing that? And really figuring out who would be my best fit. So there's a whole range of customer types out there, but who's going to resonate most with your business? And then we're going to look at some of the COVID guidelines and then marketing your offering. And Laura's going to help me with that part as we move into the presentation. And so, as Lori mentioned, you're going to be able to revisit this recording. But as we're going through, what I'd really like you to consider is some of the unique experiences in your region and how they can add value to what you offer. And then start looking at who is your best fit Ontario customer. So we've all seen, so highlighting we're at stage 2, and with this comes lots of opportunity as we're getting back into business, but lots of challenges. And I think probably for most of us, the biggest challenge is trying to figure out, nationally, it's pretty easy. Provincially has been, moving. It's certainly been moving very quickly, but staying on top of that. And now we have regional municipal challenges, and challenges in the sense that you're going to find a different kind of protocol in one area than the other. So how do you work with that? So you may understand it for your own community, but what about the people coming in from outside of your community? And how do we work together in ensuring that everyone understands what the expectations are? And how do you then manage those expectations and manage any gaps? And so the state of emergency is still extended. The US border, of course, is a big focus for all of us. And based on, if we're looking at, if we take in what we did with Ontario or Canada, where we ramped up, we flattened, and now the curve is continuing to flatten, which is great news for us. We're not seeing that yet in the US, so chances are that an opening this summer may not happen. You never know, things change quickly, but as we start looking at, I've got this window of 3 months to attract some customers and attract some visitors. Where am I going to spend my energy? So we do know that focusing on the Ontario market, there are no restrictions in that sense. People don't have to go back to their community and self-isolate. They can travel within the province, but ensuring that they stay within the COVID guidelines. And so we certainly have the heightened cleaning and hygiene practices, the group size, the physical distancing, and then the increased protection for seniors remains. And so when we take a look here, with travel still restricted in many places, summer vacations this year are going to happen close to home for millions of people. And so this is really what we're hearing from the media, what we're seeing out there. So the entire country or Destination Canada's focus is on Travel Canada, so Canada first. And then as we break it down the provinces, that message continues. And so I wanted to take a look. It was interesting. We start looking at some of the trends. So some of the trends that we've seen outside of tourism is certainly, any of the online tools have done extremely well. Zoom and companies like that. We've seen liquor sales are up. That's something that certainly in Ontario has been recorded. Home workout equipment, and then we start looking at, well, what about travel and recreational trends? So one of the big things that's happening, this is happening actually in Ontario and Canada-wide, is RV sales are up. And retailers are citing, one of the best years ever for RV sales. So a big increase there, showing that people want to get out of the house. So we're looking at increases of upwards of 35%. And rentals are also up. And so one of the big rental companies, Canadream, they normally don't focus so much on the Canadian market. They focus on selling Canada to the international market. So they've seen a big increase in domestic rentals, though overall their business is still down because they're really dependent on that international market. But regardless, we're taking a look and seeing that, the Canadian traveler and the Ontario traveler wants to get out of their house and explore. One of the other big increases, this is, across the world, around the world, is a bicycle boom. So trying to buy a bike, there's shortages around the world. So again, exciting back that people want out of the house, they want some exercise, they want to get outdoors, want to get some fresh air. And so these are all great for us as we start looking at this. And so how do you leverage some of those trends? Cottage rentals, way up to 300% compared to the previous year. And one of the other things we're seeing is an increased length of stay. So people are leaving their homes in the city and they're renting a cottage for a longer period of time, particularly if there's an opportunity to do a mixture of work and play. And in conjunction with this, what we're seeing is longer drive times. So people are willing to drive a little longer and stay a little longer. So when you're now looking at how do I market to that, or how do I package to that, or how do I build itineraries, we're going to start seeing a pattern here. You know, if the outdoor is a little extra time, willing to drive a little longer. And so, you know, when there's really a concerted effort to keep residents in Canada this year as well, and keep them provincially. So you've got lots of marketing campaigns, really promoting locals first. So that locals campaign, and we're starting to see the impact of that, particularly when we start looking at some of the Google searches. And I'm going to share some of those with you. And then how do I take that information and actually apply it to my business? So I've typed the URL in there. If you want to play with any words after the webinar, go in and test and see what people are looking for. So the one that I've done about 5 or 6 here. So Ontario cottage rental. So you're going to see a big spike here, starting to happen mid-May and continuing on. So people are looking for cottages, cabins, same thing. A little bit different, but still on the peak. Hiking Ontario, again, starting mid-May, a little drop and then picked up again. So gives us an idea of what people are wanting to do. So if I'm now taking that and saying, okay, you know, I'm in my community, some of the regular attractions are not open, you know, what can I do in order to encourage visitation and ensure that the visitor, when they're here, have a great experience? So these are some great ways to do this. So, okay, you know, we're going to combine, we're going to develop a hiking experience. And so this does not have to be guided. It can be self-guided. You'll provide the information to them, perhaps, you know, work with a local food and beverage provider and get a backpack and a packed lunch or whatever that is needed in there, and then maybe tag on some of the things that they can see and do as they're out on the hike. Maybe they get off the trail and stop somewhere in a community. So this all starts to really unfold for us, going, I can take this trend and this desire to get to the outdoor from Ontario residents. This is all based locally, and then really start developing product to appeal to them. I put the RV one in there, just as we talked about already. It's continuing to spike. Ontario vacation. So again, a little spike earlier in the year, and then it dropped off, and now it's picking up again. And boat rentals, big spike in there as well. So you're getting a pattern in here of what people are looking for and how you might leverage that. So let's, we're going to do this actually in the chat box, if I can get some input. And has anyone seen an increase in inquiries from the Ontario market compared to what you'd normally do? So Laura's going to help me manage the chat box. So if you want to pop that in there, and then we'll check back in. And as we're looking at, you know, the whole situation across the country, and that's where it starts to impact our local business as well. So that welcome mat, you know, it's different. So in parts of Canada, so we've got Atlantic Canada, who have now bubbled together, but outsiders from Atlantic Canada are not welcome at this stage. So not welcome in 3 of the provinces. 1, you have to self-isolate. So when we look at that market that normally would have considered going to Atlantic Canada, you know, that's now going to shift, and you've got a chance to capture that market, that Ontario market here in Ontario. So Ontario is a big market for Atlantic Canada. So we've got some of these situations happening. As we know, from province to province, the rules are changing. The self-isolation rules are changing. The welcome mat is different in each place. And so really focusing on local, it's going to be easiest to travel within the province this year, perhaps than going elsewhere. And so when we start looking at that, some of the trends, an interest in cabin and cottages and RVs and outdoor activity overall, Ontarians are going to travel Ontario this summer and fall. And the mode of transportation, it's heavy on the drive market. So again, as I start looking at this from an itinerary planning development or itinerary planning, what we do have, or what we will likely have, is the fact that the visitors are going to be in a car. So the transportation aspect is really mostly taken out of that. So when I start trying to move visitors around my community, around my region, it's going to be a little easier than it might be other times. The US market is out, as we know, and if you are US dependent, if you haven't already started to shift for summer 2020, it's probably a good idea to start looking at that now. So Lori, I'm just going to check in with you. Is there any comments or questions that we've had so far?
We have nothing yet, Eva.
Okay.
Just a couple of comments on my end. The term staycation has been used a lot over the last few years. I know certainly in my circle of friends that friends and family are talking about kind of rediscovering Ontario and Canada. And I think that, it's a huge opportunity, regardless of where you are, particularly maybe even the smaller communities and the rural communities, because there's more open space. And it might, it's a great opportunity if you're able to, if you're not one of those operators in that sort of a setting, to be able to reach out to them in some way, shape, or form. You talked about doing some hiking and then going off the beaten path to an area or a cafe or something different that they can stop and sort of experience, other than just doing an all-day hiking. And I think I'm not quite sure. I know some of the attendees today where they're from, but I think it'd be really interesting to hear from some of our listeners on where they're from, what type of sector they're representing, and what kind of challenges that they think they may have if they're looking to put together packages or itineraries, and maybe then we can address some of that as you continue on.
Super, thanks so much, Lori. And I think I just want to kind of jump on your one point. The safety and space consideration is all top of mind for us. So yeah, the wide open spaces, getting out of a bigger city, not having the space to roam without worrying about running into people, I think that's very appealing. And so we're planning for Ontarians to visit the region. And it's really inspiring locals and locals first. So how do I inspire people to get in their car from the centers that I draw from and come visit my business? And so we start working around the region. So taking a look at RTO 9. And yes, you can move them within your community, but when you're looking at itinerary development and overall kind of having a richer experience so they get to see a few more places, you've got so much fantastic product. And these incredible open spaces and incredible activities and dining and culinary to draw on. So theming in your area is likely easier than in others because you've got so much variety and so many themes that you can draw upon. And so when we start looking at, how do I showcase the region? And what I really want to do is share it with new customers. So I want to assess the product from a broader tourism perspective. So what's the overall offering? And so what do I have here? So I have my own business, and that's great. So if I've got a restaurant, or I've got an accommodation business, I may have a brewery or winery, spirits, I may have some guided activities. But what do I have beyond that? So really looking at, okay, I want to bring somebody in. How many nights? And so if I'm looking from an accommodation perspective, I may actually want to consider expanding the number of nights. Because of the cleaning protocols, your costs are going to go up, and it's going to be much more challenging if I've got high turnover. So is there a way for me to develop maybe 4-night experiences or 3-night experiences and packages and itineraries and then use the entire region? So they're going to stay with me, and now they're going to, spread out during the day. They're going to see a few different places. I can theme that. I can use the partners I already have and find new partners. And Lori will touch on later on how, if you need help finding new partners. And then really is, who's my best fit short-term customer? So if I'm looking at my business now, is it, am I best suited for younger couples? Am I best suited for families? or is seniors travel my, my little niche? So and if I don't have that market yet, who might be my best fit short-term market? So I really want to start playing with that. I have a limited amount of time, and probably based on what we've all been through, a limited budget. But I've got this great product range. So how do I really leverage that? And then I want to start doing an inventory assessment. So I've got a sense that perhaps I want, I'm going to look at the whole culinary piece, or I'm going to look at the whole outdoor soft adventure, hiking, maybe some kayaking. And now I need to do an inventory assessment. So what do I have? And maybe I'm going to look at my business a little bit different. And maybe there's skills and interests of the staff that I haven't been able to tap into in the past. So is there a chance for me to, create some experiences within the team I already have? And if not, that's okay. I can reach out into the community, into the region, and who can I partner with? And what are the touring routes that if I'm looking at trying to move people through the community, what do those routes look like? And from there, I need to now put a whole COVID lens on it. So, if I'm going to do this, what are the restrictions? How many people can sit at the table? If I'm going to do an outdoor dining experience, how might that look different than perhaps something I've done in the past, or maybe I haven't done this? So how do I make sure I keep everyone safe? My team, the staff that work with me, the customers that are coming to my business, and the community as a whole. So I've got this role to play to ensure that everybody's safe. And the last thing that anyone wants is an outbreak at their business on any level. It's so devastating on so many levels. So we really want to make sure that we, make everyone is protected. And then we start now. Now I've got the sense of who my customer is. I've got a theme in mind. I've got some partners in the community. I've been able to start putting it together and put a COVID lens on it. And now I really want to build packages, collaborate, partner, and refer. And so in here, we're going to just kind of go through the different steps. So if I'm looking at the assessment piece, who might this appeal to? So back to, how do I define my best customer? Is it the outdoor enthusiast? Is it the people that just really don't want to do a lot? They just want to come and unwind. Families with younger children. So let's, and you might pick one or two of them, and then you're going to have different itineraries, partners, packages for each of these groups. So I want to get a handle on who that might be. And then really, understanding your customers. And so you've got your existing customers and then your potential new customers. So I want to take you through a tool. This is through Destination Ontario. And so Destination Ontario has done this, and they've taken a look at, there's 12 types that Ontario appeals to. The one I wasn't sure about was number 6 when I first saw this, and that's the casino enthusiasts. And so we got that pampered relaxer. It's kind of get me out of all this chaos and let me unwind. Those that want to come and they want to be enriched, they want to learn something. We've got, perhaps the outgoing mature couples, or those that really like to travel on their own, those that want to be immersed in nature. So this can help guide you as you're taking a look at who might be the best fit. And we start taking a look at what the numbers look like. So we've got, those mellow, just let me unwind. They're high. And the family memory builders, let's get the family together and get out there and have a great experience. They're high as well. We have the youthful socializers. And so for each of the segments, you've got a pretty good numbers. We've got the mellow vacationers and the pampered relaxers. Pampered relaxers are kind of taking it one step further, so very much into the spa and those type of activities. And so we're looking at some of the priority market segments, and Lori and I were talking about this earlier. And these are high yield segments. The question was, is this going to change with COVID? And unfortunately, we won't know that research till after the fact. But what I want to do now as a business is kind of take a look at going, okay, this is an understanding of what I have already of my business. Here's some research and some tools for me to take a look at. And now I'm going to target certain segment groups. And if you go on to the Destination Ontario site, it's really great because if I've got a sense that I want to go after these connected explorers, it's going to help me. It's going to help me really understand what inspires them. You know, so authentic experiences is a high one. And it's kind of an escape. So now I start taking a look at how I'm going to market to them. So some of the key words in here, and you'll have this information available to you, is, you know, sharing stories, engaged, authentic. So now I can start taking that information, building some products and itineraries and partnerships, and then using some of these keywords in order to help me actually market. Any comments or questions so far? If so, pop them in there and Lori will help me with them.
Eva?
Yeah.
Just a question that I have. For the last 3 or so months, most of us have been, you know, working from home or not working, basically spending more time away from the normal things that we were doing, whether it's outdoor activities or you know, cottage time with the family, or going to the pub for drinks or going to restaurants for dinner. Is it your impression that people are looking to relax more? If you can call the last 3 months relaxing, I'm not sure I would use that term, but we've all basically been holed up in our homes and apartments, not really able to do anything. So are they looking to relax more or just relax differently?
I think probably just a change of scene. So it's been very, very much the same every day, you know, whether you're working from home or not. So it's, you know, now there's a chance, weather's good. There's a chance to get out there and try something new. That trip you planned to the south of France isn't happening. And so now it's kind of great. I've got some time. I really would like to get out of my regular routine and what's available out there. And I think that's what's happening is people are kind of taking a look at the province, maybe the way they haven't in the past, because they were used to going to other destinations. So that's the trends that I've started to see, Lori. So I think it's great news for our 209.
Right, and I think just maybe simplifying life.
Yeah, that's probably a good way to look at it. I think we've realized that, you know, we need, the connection is so incredibly important. I think we always knew that, but I think it's come to the forefront as we've been cut off.
Okay, terrific, thank you.
Thanks. And so now I've you know, delved a little deeper into that customer type. And so now I want to start taking a look at that whole inventory assessment. So what are the stories, what are the assets, and really what are the treasures? And sharing some of you know, your knowledge of your community and your region, you know, those best kept secrets, the places that you like to go. It's back to that whole connection piece that we talked about, Lori, and really showcasing what you have and what you're proud of in your community, and finding people that will value that. And so we want to take a look at, you know, if you've now decided that I'm going to go after, I'm going to give the example here of the young family market. So, you know, there might be aspects of your current offering that needs to be enhanced. So maybe that's a market you haven't gone after before. So what are some things that you need to have available? And so there might be some infrastructure things that you're going to purchase, but ideally you partner. So it could be some family activities that you haven't had in the past. Some of the meals, that whole thing might be different. And now, you know, as we move along and start taking a COVID lens on that, is there a chance to do, you know, maybe you've got some rental cabins, some outdoor barbecues, or individual fire pits, or something along that line. So what do I have, and what might I need to enhance or revamp? And what are your travelers going to do during their stay? So if you've got those that just want to, you know, flop into a big comfortable chair with a book, that's great. You probably don't need to make a lot of changes in there. If you've got those really outdoor enthusiasts, you know, how are you going to keep them engaged? Where are you going to send them? How are you going to ensure that they have what they need? So again, some of the regular services and amenities may not be open or may be limited in their offering. How are you going to fill that gap? And how can you really help the visitor in taking in what your region has to offer? Sometimes it's hard to get that information. So having themed itineraries and stories, finding out what's most important to that visitor, and starting to build this inventory of itineraries and experiences to share with your visitors. And it's really about working together. So considering the experience providers you might have in your community. So maybe there's some artists that can put together, some kind of programming that they're going to do once a week or once a day, whatever that looks like. Is there ways to look at what you currently have and repurpose it? So could it become a venue because it's a larger space and you can still manage the social distancing and you can have some interactive interpretation or some interactive artistic experience? What might that look like? And then we want to start layering and linking these experiences. So it could be a very short experience where I've got some history buffs. So perhaps the museum's not open. Lori, that is the case, correct? That the museums are not open?
Correct.
Right. But maybe there's a way of still giving the history of the region in a different way. So through your own lens or working with a partner, maybe it's a walking tour that hadn't taken place before, and so you're standing in front of the museum and telling a little bit about the story. So, and I've got 4 of these smaller 15-minute experiences, and now at the end of the day, it becomes quite a robust itinerary. And really, really inspiring the local visitor, but more sharing that whole local flavor that you have. And so what do you know? So it might be the best kept secrets, that best cinnamon bun in the neighborhood. What can you share? And who else in your team can help in really creating this inventory or this assessment? And so now when I've got all this, how is it going to work? So, the group size is still there. I can't run groups of 30, but how can I run maybe smaller programming more frequently? So I'm going to start looking at now revamping how that offering works and working with the partners. So it could be someone that's done this kind of interpretation in the past, and now it needs to change. And how can you work together that you win, the community wins, and the customer wins? And so, a couple of little examples here. Curbside food tasting. So that's starting to become a little bit of a trend. So is there a way to take them to 3 or 4 spots? Now you can sit on a patio, but is there some way to create that almost dine around experience curbside? Walking in a farm and having, working with that farmer, working with that farm and having an experience. There's still, of course, the, farm to table dinners, but is there something else that can happen in there? A walk in the woods, and this, when you're looking at some of the programming for families, so taking snapshots, coming back, sharing that with the others, sharing your knowledge, your story of your business and your path, and gather and harvest and create and learning how to make something. So, maybe you're not as busy as you had been and your chef's got a little time and you can come up with some innovative programming in the afternoon. So really looking at it differently than you have in the past. How do I take that visitor and have them leaving raving because they had this interaction, because they had been cut off for several months and they've learned something new, they got a chance to be away with their family. So lots of opportunity in there. And then the creating the itineraries, it's such a great thing when a visitor comes in, because they may, and particularly if they're first-time visitors, so guiding them through your community and region. And really the why and why should they go to this place, or what's the significance of that? I remember years ago I was in Grossmoor on the west coast the west coast of Newfoundland, and this was a trip I did on my own. I ended up on this very nice beach, and there was lots of rocks. And I didn't think much of it. I took some pictures. It was beautiful. And then I had a chance to go back a few years later, and there was a Parks Canada interpreter there. And when he told the story, the entire thing changed, because there was so much kind of historical significance to this place that all I saw was beautiful rocks, but there was a much more beautiful thing happening there, this whole story unfolding. And so that becomes your local treasures and your local stories. With the itineraries, of course, comes the responsibility and commitment to the guests to make sure that they are safe, that they don't get lost, that the suggestions work within a certain time frame, that they've got someone to call if they're stuck, and then any considerations. So are there, is this best suited for, children over 10, any of that information. So starting to put these itineraries together, really considering your customer types and giving them as much information and opportunity to explore, that they do come back at the end. It's been a great overall experience. And of course, the approximate costs are helpful. So we've got the difference between partnering and collaborating. So when we're looking at the partnering, it could be partnering referring. So you're going to send your visitors, your customers to another business. So that's operationally pretty easy. The itineraries takes a little bit of work, but once they're done, you just keep adding new itineraries. And the great thing is checking in with the guests at the end of the day and finding out what else they discovered or what else they did while they were on that hiking trip, and now building additional itineraries. It gets a little trickier with packaging, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. And so with the referral partners, it's still, you're putting your reputation on the line when you say to someone, this is a great place, I think you should go. So hopefully a trusted partner. And you want a variety of these partners. So to meet a variety of tastes, and particularly if you've got a couple of different business segments. And you're going to share customers. So this is the great thing. You're going to recommend their business. They're going to recommend yours. Everybody's winning out of this. And you need some knowledge of the offering. So why should I go to this great place? So sharing that with me. And then details on how to access and connect. So pretty easy when we're looking at the referrals. When we're building the packages, it's a little bit more of an intense partnership. So the difference is there is one person is the lead and taking the money, dispersing the funds, being the key point of contact. So as a result, the customer that's buying that package, you need to know everything about it, even if it's not your business, if you're the person that's taking that booking and the point of contact. So really be able to answer questions and sell. And then from an operational standpoint, it's a little trickier, because there are going to be some liability issues. There's going to be, some considerations of cancellation policy, pricing, how is that going to work? If you're doing more of the work, should there be a little more compensation for you? So this is when you start getting into a more intense partnership of building those packages and building it for the longer term. So you want to make sure when you're putting all this work in that your partner's with you for at least a season. And then when I'm, looking, Lori and I were talking earlier about the pricing aspect. The more I can put in that is of high value to the customer, of low impact to me. So one example I had is that I can go to a restaurant and I can enjoy a great meal. So that's good. And a nice glass of wine with that, of course. The next one is that I actually had a chance to watch the chef make the meal. And then someone took me through a little bit of a wine tasting. So now it's moved up another level. If I had a chance to go to the local market with the chef and actually prepare that meal and learn a little bit more about the food that I'm about to eat and why it's important to the region and the community. And now I got to, in a safe way, sit and dine with others and enjoy this meal and, hear some stories and get a little more insight about the wine and how that winery started and the history of that place. all of a sudden now it's moved from, enjoying a great meal to something much more robust and something much more memorable. And so now how do I price that? If I've had a chance to have this almost once in a lifetime experience where I spent a half a day with the chef and I learned all this great stuff and I got to meet his favorite vendors at the market, or he, got that based on our current COVID situation, it was dropped off by his favorite vendors. I still got to hear all that. All of a sudden now the pricing shifts because it's a very different experience. So just wanted to get a sense if anyone wants to pop a little note into the chat box for Lori there. Who started already to create some new itineraries or travel packages? So I've got a yes or not yet. So if you've got that, we'd love to hear from you. And so as we start looking at, recapping this, this part of the program, so we've got really assist the visitor. And so it's you're considering the audience, you want to know how much time they have available and maybe inspire a little more time, a general sense of the amount that they would spend. And I've put in here some of their known interests. So they're, they may have an interest in the outdoors, but they haven't tried perhaps the kayaking. So I've got known interests and now I've got a chance to maybe inspire some new interests. And then really looking at the inventory. So the local assets, so things to do and see, any current gaps, so if there's those museums and activities and attractions, if they're not there, how are you going to fill that time? And I want to get a sense of what's free and what's some paid activities. And then how can I start weaving some themes and stories? And then from here, now I've got a really good sense of customer, the idea or the theme of kind of broad, and now I'm going to jump in and start creating itineraries, referring other businesses, and packaging and partner with other businesses, and really inspiring the visitor. And so when we start, when I've done this workshop with some other destinations, and the big thing was kind of who is the market that you think you're going to lose this summer. So the easiest one is if you've had the US market. Okay, so, chances are, well, they're not coming in July. We're not sure about August. And so how dependent am I on that? So what numbers am I looking at? So what do I need, how much do I need to try to replace? And how am I going to do that? And this starts then, forming how you're going to approach this challenge. And it's really a challenge. We've had an unexpected shift in our business model, and now we're trying to fill that gap. Great, okay. So we're now looking at attracting that visitor. And so I want to get back into those key profile. So when I start looking at, well, who is it? What would they be interested in? And I do, it's not necessarily what you're interested in unless your business is built really on your interests. So they're 100% connected. But what are these travelers, if I had to say, well, this ideal traveler would be really interested in the outdoors or really interested in immersing in local culture. Or perhaps, based on my business and the kind of things that I do, I'd really like to go after vegetarians or those that are really into healthy eating. So I now start getting this picture of what this traveler values, what inspires them, what they like to do. And from here, it's going to be easier for me to start developing some product and itineraries to appeal to that. And so we start looking at, these elements for creating lasting travel memories. So they're that theme or the story. So if I can create that, it has to flow together, and the visitors are already attracted to that, I've got a really good chance of having a lasting impression on that visitor. It's got to be engaging. And I think, this is back to your comment earlier, Lori, of, what's important to us right now. I think that ability to connect, so there's got to be that safe engagement. And I want to learn something, or maybe I'm going to be inspired. And there's a chance here that you can really personalize and customize this. You know, some businesses do an incredible job on this. I worked with one operator years ago, and you know, he had 3 vacation rentals, but he took that whole experience and itinerary and packaging design to a new level. So he found out as much as he could about these travelers, and then these kind of unexpected surprises kept coming up for the travelers, but they weren't unplanned. So they were planned from behind the scenes, but really welcome and unexpected for the visitor. So is there a way for me to really personalize it? The more personalized and customized it is, the stronger the impact on me as a visitor and that memory piece. And if I have a really positive experience and really great memories, I'm going to share that story with others. And that's what you want them to do. And so really in here, you can do this in the chat box, or something that you can do after the session is, you know, really understanding what those broader key search words. So we looked at them trying to define the traveler, but you're going to use them then in a marketing capacity as key search words. And the more you can define your target customer, the easier it's going to be to actually market to them. So how can I really define them and get that message out to them? And so in here, when we start looking at presenting the offer, it's going to be, it's going to be modified. So it's going to be still very appealing and intriguing, but that whole space, clean, spacious in here. This looks like a family traveling together, so that's a good, safe thing to have. And focusing on outside. So, the outside piece, we've all come to learn that we're safest outdoors. So having that part of the visual may help you in marketing to your customer group. And really active, moving, healthy and happy, and really helping the guest envision a memorable experience. So would this image resonate to them? Is this what you want them to experience in your region? And so in here, I've got a visual. What else am I going to build for them? So this really works for them. And so a couple of ways to reach out, of course, your website. And that's one of the things I've noticed. Things are changing so fast. So some businesses have done a really great job on their website of posting their new safety and hygiene practices. So this, it was never a marketing tool so much in the past. I mean, we always expected to be in a clean, safe place, but now it's really being used as a product or experience differentiator. So if you haven't had a chance to really define your new standards of health and safety on your website, it's probably a good time to do that. And then your new offering. So what have you put together? So once you've gone through this this process of identifying the customer and the offering and the community partners and building this, making sure that it's easy for them to find, using social media, of course. Those key search words are critical. There might be an opportunity for you to use some third parties. So, perhaps you got some extra cabins, and in the past they were always sold out, and this year they didn't. So, if you need some help, right now cottages are at a premium. It's hard to find them, so you might be okay, but if it was last minute, there's companies out there that'll help you with that. And OTA, so an online travel agent. So if you have a little more robust package, there might be some ways online to promote that, or working with a company that promotes these kind of activities, whatever traditional methods have worked for you in the past. And then I'm going to turn it over to Lori, and she's going to talk about RTO 9. So Lori, over to you.
Thanks so much, Eva. I've actually been scribbling like crazy with points that I wanted to discuss with this, but I will start with RTO 9. So we, of course, being the regional tourism organization for the Southeastern Ontario area, our goal is to help our partners, whether they're DMOs from across the region or individual tourism operators, to bring visitors to the area. Of course, with COVID, there hasn't been an awful lot of that being done. So our presence in social media has been, up until more recently, what our partners have been doing, which is basically staying top of mind. Our digital marketing specialist, Lindsay Medeiros, has done a spectacular job of posting of sort of the activities within our boundaries, which are from Cornwall, the Cornwall area, through to Quinte West and north to the south portion of Smiths Falls. So we've been setting the stage, as most of, I'm sure, the attendees today have, for when those doors do open. And it's going to be slow. And if there's any indication of what's potentially could happen moving forward, if we look at what's happening in the States, with several states pulling back again because they opened too soon, or more importantly, they didn't open maybe as tightly as they should have. So I think we all have to be prepared for that. But and certainly in the unfortunately in the Kingston area right now, we've had an issue where the KFLNA Health Board has mandated mask wearing basically everywhere you're going in public, to try and get that under control. So we're here to work with our partners, and I know that, as I'm sure everyone does at this point, that there's so much information, and I can tell by the number of people attending today that there's a bit of information overload, a bit of webinar overload. But if you get just a couple of good pieces of information from whatever you're listening to or reading, then it's worth your time. But if I can just take a few moments just to discuss again a few of the issues that you've raised, Eva, showcasing your community you had mentioned earlier. And I think, certainly that's something that we all do across the region. And I think we do a great job. Our asset list for Southeastern Ontario is quite spectacular. It's not all water-based by any stretch. We've got a terrific culinary group, not just in Kingston, but right across the area again. And that has certainly helped. Pushing forward is going to be the challenge for basically every sector out there, particularly for sectors like cruising. But I think there's a real opportunity for people to really be brave and to not be afraid to make some mistakes. We all hope they're never going to be big ones, but I think right now people are, for the most part, more forgiving when we do make mistakes. I think communication is our biggest tool that we're going to need to use moving forward. So to talk about the stories and themes that you discussed earlier, is it an opportunity for downtown cores? I know there are some downtown cores that are blocking off certain sections to automobile traffic, so that's great. It gets more people outside. Is there an opportunity to do, outside demos with some of your local, the people who kind of make your city and are known for, whether it's food or crafts or something else? Are there storytellers that can be brought in board? If you're a B&B, and I know there are lots of B&Bs throughout our region, what can you do differently from your perspective in your industry that will really draw people to you? And it might be something that you don't necessarily do until they get there, but that will help to increase repeat business down the road. And there are lots of opportunities, and I thank you for mentioning that. I'm here to help. RTO9 is here to help all of our partners. If you are stuck, if you're unsure of how to push forward with itineraries and packages, if you're unsure of what partners you can and should be reaching out to, or how that partnership can look, I would encourage you to reach out to me, and I will put my contact information. It is on our website. All our team information is on our website, but I will type it in the chat room here. Because there are everything from cottage rentals to kayaking companies, to fishing charters, to individual chocolate shops. So we have just such a wide variety of businesses, and sometimes you're so busy trying to stay afloat, you're not quite sure how to push forward and how to put that plan together. So I would encourage you to reach out to me. You talked a bit about repurposing venues, repurposing people, if I can say that. So who's your shining star? A lot of the times, as if you're an individual operator, more specifically, you wear so many hats that you kind of forget that you've got these people that work for you who have some great ideas and who may love being in the spotlight to do a tour or to create something to make it a little bit more special. So don't forget about those people that you work with on a daily basis, whether it's your staff, your team, or suppliers, or just other businesses in your area. And then, what I really enjoyed seeing, I think we all have, is the move to outside. So do you have an opportunity in your business to take some of it outside? If you're a restaurant and you have a backyard or a grassy area, I'm sure at this point you've already done that, but is that something that we're all hoping, I think, we can continue moving forward, that we won't be told that we have to shut that down when we get on the other side of this. So and then collecting feedback is really important. Eva, you mentioned that, to help develop future partnerships and itineraries. Right, and that can be anything from having that conversation with people in your restaurant, and if you're the owner, it's a real treat to have the owner of a restaurant approach me. I know when I go out to dinner, the few times that has happened, to just have a conversation. How are you managing through all of this? How are you doing? It's a bit of a challenge to talk through the masks, I get that, but have your staff with some funky masks with sayings on them. Do something that creates a little bit of buzz and a little chuckle. Those are the kinds of things that will make people remember your restaurant, your B&B, the kayak lesson they went in on. People, you mentioned that we're still looking, and maybe even more so now, to connect. So I think it's important that we look at those different ways to connect that really don't cost anything. It's a conversation, and it makes people feel important, engaged, relevant. And then, which market might you lose this year? That was one of your questions, Eva.
Mm-hmm.
How can you replace them? The reality is there's a good chance that you won't be able to see any of them this year, but the more we are seeing at RTO 9 with our partners, the way they are finding a way over the wall, around the wall, under the wall, whatever it is, finding new ways to do business. And almost without exception, it involves partners. It involves that kind of old-fashioned neighborhood, working with other partners. They may not even be in the same sector, but just kind of grabbing the community as a whole and pulling everyone in as you manage it together. And I think that that's what visitors like to come and see when they're coming to different areas. It's no more just coming for one or two things. They really want to get a good feel for the community. So that's certainly where we're trying to work our social media posts and letting people know about the stars throughout the region. Yes. So, to that point, we're what I would suggest, and I don't know that enough of our partners realize that we really are here to help. And sometimes it's just a conversation. If you're stuck, if we don't know the answer, as you said, we'll find somebody and we'll refer you to that person or make that introduction, whatever it is. I really would encourage you to reach out to us. And on that note, I'm going to put in my contact information, Eva, and hand the microphone back to you.
Great, super. Thank you so much, Lori. Okay, well, that kind of takes us to really what Lori just talked about is, you've got a chance here. You've already developed that customer base, And now it's, developing a new customer base, engaging, connecting and engaging. And then at some point, you're going to have a new fan. So hopefully next summer, you're not just a last minute scramble choice because the trip to Europe got canceled. You're the sought after destination. And then they start referring and becoming advocates for you. And so just a quick recap here is really doing an assessment from a broader tourism perspective of who is my customer and what is my offering, who could be my best fit short-term customer, what do I have in my own business and in my community, what are some of the gaps, and how do I now put the COVID requirements onto the new offering, and who can I partner and collaborate with. And so, you've invested an hour here, and I thank you so much for that. I'm hoping that before you get off the call, you can think about one thing that you want to do from something that came out of this discussion between Lori and I today. And I'll open it up at this point to any questions, and I thank you so much. I hope you have a good summer. I hope you attract lots of local visitors. Stay happy, stay safe. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Eva. If there are any questions, if I could ask you to type them in the chat room, then we can table them at this point, and hopefully we'll have a few come through. But if not, I always have questions. So, and I have questions that are usually based on conversations that I have had with our partners. In a few webinars ago, I had a couple of B&Bs reach out to me and say, how do I package? How do I make it more interesting other than, leaving chocolate on their bed, right, on the pillow? And I think, every B&B is different, and they each have their own assets to draw upon. The first thing I would do, honestly, is when people are booking, I would have a conversation, and that could almost go for any industry, including restaurants. So if I had a B&B, what's really important to you in a B&B? Who are your favorite authors? Do you like strong coffee or weak coffee, or do you like cappuccino? Find out those little things that you can, you can pull a couple of books from your library if you have a library and leave it in their room. You can, you can deliver a pot of coffee to their room if they would like it at 8 o'clock in the morning, if that's their thing. So just getting a little bit more personalized to create that buzz that we all want. We all want people to go on their social media sites and say, oh my goodness, I went to the most amazing B&B in Gananoque, and John and Mary, the owners, could not have been nicer. They brought me coffee. They had a couple of interesting books. So it's the little things like that. It doesn't cost a ton, and particularly right now with we're in revenue recovery, probably for the next couple of years for some. It's going to be that much more important to kind of create that buzz and differentiate yourself from anybody else. And then again, for cottage rentals, the same sort of thing. But if you have 5 or 6 or 10 or 20 cottages that you're renting, what can you do that still, of course, addresses social distancing to make it a little bit more special? And it may be a tongue-in-cheek COVID event that you have, but it first starts with having the conversation with your guests, engaging them, and finding out what they're nervous about, how you can address that to make them feel safe when they're coming into your establishment, and then going from there. So I know we don't have any questions, Eva, quiet group, but again, I think it's just because there have been a lot of webinars, and I think packaging and itineraries can sometimes scare people. It can it can involve a lot of work, but it doesn't have to. And if I were to say one thing, I would say just start small. So start with one partner, and maybe it's if you're offering if you're a hiking tour company or kayaking, maybe you start with one partner who's going to provide a box lunch. Or you have something set up at the end where you're going to sit around a fire and have wine, or that might be a bit difficult, but marshmallows and you know, whatever it is, marshmallows and some beverage. The reality is that we've been forced to step it up a little bit more certainly over the last 5 to 10 years with experiential travel. That is not taking a rest at all, even though COVID has happened. The demand for experiences, if anything, has increased because people are realizing more and more what's truly important in life. We're going to come out of this very, very different in some areas. There are going to be more people working from home, which provides more leisure time, which hopefully eventually will provide more discretionary spending. So the goal is to just do it differently. Just do things differently and don't be afraid to make mistakes. And certainly, you know, if you're again, not sure of how to make that happen, I've got a ton of ideas I can help you out with.
That's great.
What are your questions? Oh, now I've just got Lindsay Medeiros, our social marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I called you it again, Lindsay, didn't I? I promised I wouldn't call her that. Just mention that the chat is not working. Now, I don't know why the chat is not working. So what I'm going to do, if I can figure out how to do this, everyone, is I'm just going to unmute everyone. Unmute. Okay, we are unmuted. So, unmute Stacey. Well, I have unmuted everyone.
Okay, I just did a test and it seemed to work.
They have not unmuted. Unmute all participants. Yes, that's what I would like to do.
Okay.
He was typing it.
Okay, so unmute all. Well, that's interesting. I do apologize. But we have, Lindsay is helping me out here. So just wondering where the personas shown were from, Eva?
Destination Ontario.
Destination Ontario, okay.
Yeah.
Well, they're the 12 different
Yes.
Traveler profiles that
Right.
they can access.
Absolutely.
And, right, and Lindsay's saying that she has, Lindsay posted them and the link.
Great. Thank you very much, Lindsay.
Okay, terrific. And I apologize, everyone. I don't know what's going on with the chat room. Okay, any other questions, Lindsay? This is why I need someone else on the call with me.
Okay. Okay, you can certainly email Lori or myself any questions if you didn't get a chance to pop those up there, and we'll gladly answer them for you.
Terrific. Okay, so we're at 3:07. We are 7 minutes over. I appreciate everyone joining the call. Oh, here we go. Given that, so, Eva, can I keep you on a few minutes more?
Of course, of course.
Okay, so now I see them. They came up under questions and not under chat.
Oh, I see.
So
Yeah.
given that so many people got into bread baking, it's funny, I was listening to this on the radio yesterday, and the like at the beginning of the pandemic, do you expect that these sort of pioneering or survival skills will translate into in-demand experiences?
Wow, what a great question. I think, you know, with so much that's happened to us during COVID and how things have changed and some of the crafts that the young kids are doing, I think there has been kind of a look at the past and trying out things that your grandparents did. I think it's worth a try. You know, and if you've got, you know, the family's been baking bread, and I think to have them teach them a new way of doing it or some other aspect of it or something along that line, I think that would be very appealing. Great question.
Right. Okay, great question. Let's see what another one is here. Do you see a resurgence in B&Bs? Curious whether what's happening with restaurants is driving demand. i.e. brunch just isn't the same, or if the idea of sharing space with hosts is turning people away from B&Bs.
So great question. I've had that come up from a couple of different angles. I had it once come up from the B&B owners saying, you know, we're really nervous. We live in our home, and rightfully so. So I think this fear of mixing with others is there. It's there and it's real. So if you have a B&B, I think it's more important than ever to really showcase what you're doing from a cleaning standpoint, how you're going to serve breakfast differently. So I know many times when I've been at a B&B, I go down and there's a cute, cozy breakfast room with lots of people in it, and it's self-serve for the food. Well, that's no longer allowed. So, you know, how is it going to be different? Perhaps it's giving the option to have it delivered to their room. So taking a look at, you know, what are the concerns? What are the concerns and how can I minimize that? You know, is there an opportunity, particularly with the great weather we're having this summer, to put tables outside and let them enjoy their breakfast outside? So yes, I think some people are nervous about mixing, but the other advantage of a B&B is that you're not mixing with that many. So, you know, how many rooms are there in reality? So this draw to cabins and cottages and more independent accommodation, there's been a surge in that for sure. So maybe riding on that, and that you've got maximum 3 rooms occupied, and these are the measures you put in place.
Okay, terrific. And Julianne is asking, are there any examples of how virtual experiences, so online concerts, virtual tours, have been integrated into itineraries with guests in our region? Do visitors want to experience online experiences while on vacation? And do you have comments about that, Eva?
You know, I've used a couple of really great online examples, but they were more when people were at home, and they were used more to inspire you to travel to that region or that place or that restaurant once things got back to normal. So I'm not 100% sure on that. I think a lot of us have spent a lot of time in front of our computer screens. So I think the chance of having a more traditional kind of experience where face-to-face, even if there was a piece of plexiglass between us or 6 or 8 feet between us, I think that might be more of the appeal. Some I've seen do a combination. There's one I used as an example in a previous workshop. It's Massimo Bruno, and he runs a supper club here in Toronto. It's very popular. So of course his business got pulled from under him on March 13th, like many of us. And he ended up, you know, really innovatively, so a combination. So the food basket arrives at your door, and you get the wine list in advance for the pairing. And then it's partially cooked. So you're cooking the rest of it on your own, and you're online with 30 people. He's sold out very quickly on those. And he's continuing them even though some food and beverage operations have opened up. So I think it's test it and see at this stage. Yeah.
True enough.
Great question. Thank you.
Okay, and then just a comment that came through was that Prince Edward County is seeing a lot of inquiry about cycling and cycling routes, and that just really leads us back to people wanting the more simple outdoor activities where they don't have to necessarily wear a mask, but certainly don't have to be close with people. So there are a lot. Yeah.
That was a great example for building an itinerary around. So I'm just going to jump on that, Lori, if I can. If you're seeing that kind of trend, great. So, here's some places to stop. Here's some bicycle repair shops along the way if your tire blows. Really great opportunity to leverage the trend.
Terrific. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Okay, so we have gone over. We're 12 minutes over now. I do appreciate you sticking
Small group, but enthusiastic. Thank you so much.
Yeah, terrific. I really appreciate you jumping in again, Eva. We rely on your expertise in the tourism field quite a bit. I've certainly been to one of your experiential tourism workshops and got a lot out of it. So it's always great when we can bring you back in and give a perspective that goes beyond the Ontario market. And we'll see what we can call on you for in the future. But I appreciate everyone attending. I do apologize for the chat room, the questions. For GoToMeeting does it differently than GoToWebinar. So the learning curve with tech, I'm sure I'm not the only one, but it's very real. Again, this is recorded. It will be on tourismtalk.ca, and I believe actually attendees will receive a copy of it in their email. So thank you for everyone for taking time out of your very busy day. And we do have a couple more webinars next week, so you can check our website for that. Eva, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you,
Great
Lori. Always a pleasure working with you.
All
Okay.
right. Take care.
Take care, everyone. Bye now.
Bye.